Let's open up the Black Series Archive 6-inch figure of Obi-Wan Kenobi Padawan.
Varykino. If it's Star Wars, we collect it.
Hello there, thanks for visiting Varykino. It's been a quiet few months for Black Series collectors here in New Zealand, but I'm really excited to finally have a new wave of archive carded Black Series 6-inch figures available here in New Zealand. I picked up a couple from the new wave that I am missing. I was never able to find them during their original releases because, of course, the archive are reissues of earlier Black Series figures. This Padawan Obi-Wan Kenobi originally came out in 2019. I missed out way back then, so I'm really excited to finally have him for my collection. The wave also includes Luke Skywalker from The Mandalorian in that Imperial Light Cruiser. I just opened up that one as well, a fantastic figure, and I'm expecting this one to be just as cool. I can't wait to open it up. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Coming up really soon, I'll take a closer look at the figure, the articulation, all of the details. But first, let's take one last look at the packaging. I really love the Black Series Archive line. They are the perfect openers, in my opinion. We have a much simpler packaging style compared to the boxes with that fantastic side art or those beautiful sort of Kenner and other replica anniversary carded figures. And of course, because the Archive line are reissues of earlier figures, if you already have a boxed one or something really fun that you're not sure if you want to open, these are perfect to open up because we've got that much simpler packaging style. For the most part, we've just got black and grey. Black around the left-hand side and across the top where we have the Black Series logo, and then we have this pale grey down the side with the Archive logo here, just plain simple text, and of course light grey behind the figure, which means that they really do stand out, especially those characters that wear a lot of black like Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine. We have the character name in large text down the side here on the left, Obi-Wan Kenobi in brackets Padawan, because of course this is his appearance as a Padawan in the Phantom Menace. The backing card has a few unusual angles. We've got a little bit of a cutout here which mirrors the angled cutout here of the bubble, and we've also got a little bit of a cardboard insert here with some black and white art there of Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi. We can see the figure here with one lightsaber accessory. I wasn't really expecting much else with the figure. That's pretty much all a Jedi needs. Moving on to the back, we've got that same artwork here, much larger. We can really see the fantastic details, a very good likeness of Ewan McGregor, I think. And we have a little bit of information here about the original issue of this figure. We can see the year was 2019, Obi-Wan Kenobi Padawan, and we can see the box style, that older black box where we had the red border and things like that, and of course that little bit of artwork there as well. I missed that original release. Really happy to finally add this figure to my collection. We also have a short blurb here. As a Padawan, Obi-Wan Kenobi was the headstrong apprentice to Qui-Gon Jinn. When the Jedi Council granted him knighthood, he fulfilled Qui-Gon's dying wish of training Anakin Skywalker in the Force. I think it's really cute that they have to put an asterisk next to the original boxed version pictured here and note that this is not available because of course generally on the back of a lot of Star Wars action figures we have a lineup of other figures also available at the time, even though this clearly says 2019 and he is probably long since sold out. The rest of the packaging, we've just got a small amount of copyright, barcode text, all of that kind of stuff. Personally, it's tidy packaging, but I think this is perfect for opening up because we have this large bubble that is unprotected by cardboard like on the mainline Black Series boxes. These can get a little bit dinged and squashed, especially if they've been on the toy store shelves for a little while, so they're perfect to open it up. So let's get into it. So now I have the Obi-Wan Kenobi Padawan figure and his one lightsaber accessory out of the packaging so we can go over all of the details. And I'm going to start like I usually do with the face and the likeness to actor Ewan McGregor. So I'm not sure that this is my favorite likeness of Ewan as Obi-Wan Kenobi. He does look very different in the Phantom Menace to how he looks from Attack of the Clones onward. He tends to look a little bit more styled, more towards Alec Guinness, because of course we're trying to merge into the original trilogy appearance of Ben Kenobi. But in the Phantom Menace, his short hair does give him a different sort of appearance, and I can kind of see that coming through here with the sculpting. I just think that the modern figures, because of course this is 5 years old by now, it's a modern casting of older sculpting, so it's going to have its sort of quirks, and I think Hasbro has gotten a lot better with the facial likeness of Star Wars actors these days. We see some fantastic likenesses coming coming through. Even when they've done a character before, they're just trying to improve each time they release a new figure. So I think it does capture sort of Obi-Wan. It just looks perhaps not as like Ewan McGregor. Those little details just kind of somehow just not quite there, but I do like the actual details here. His hair is sculpted as one part of the head, so we've got a generally tidy paint line. It got maybe just a tiny bit here at the widow's peak, just a tiny little smudge there. Overall, pretty tidy. And of course, we've got a separate little piece attached to the back for his little ponytail there. And we also have a piece just attached in behind the ear for his Padawan braid lying over his right shoulder. Quite long, and it is plastic. Of course, we don't have any kind of, doll hair used here. This is a thin plastic one, but it's sculpted to lie over his shoulder really nicely. I like the way that it's sitting there, and we can see we've got that sort of a hair braided texture there, and then this part sort of being the tail end there, hanging there. Quite nice. A very minimal attachment point. I can kind of see it obviously looking there at the back, but from the front, you can't see it, which of course most of the time my figures are going to be standing facing forward there. Very nice. I like the paintwork on the eyes. That's pretty much the only sort of element here. We've got a little bit of paint for the eyebrows and the eyes. The rest of it is just human skin tone. Of course, we've got the hands there as well, being the other exposed skin there as well. So moving on. Now he has a very light colored Jedi outfit in the Phantom Menace. He's got pretty much sort of a cream or very pale sort of beige tones and things like that. His pants are slightly darker than his tunics, as we've got here. Not quite white, but we're really trying to sort of represent Obi-Wan as being a light side character in the Phantom Menace. So I really like the use of his pale tunics here. And his tunic is slightly different in the Phantom Menace as to some of the ones we have later. The tabards don't run down past the belt in the back. We generally see that more being a traditional style later on in Attack of the Clones and Episode 3, where we get to more of that standardized sort of tabards hanging down here on sort of the lower part of the tunic, but we have them sort of ending here at the belt. Some really nice sculpting here. I like the draping, even though there is no paint differentiating the different layers, because of course Jedis have a lot of layers to their tunics. We've got sort of the inner shirt, which is worn close to the body, then we have the tunic, and then we have the tabards laid over, and then we also have the Obi sash and a leather belt. This is all just one color of plastic. I don't see sort of anything. There's no sort of washing or gradient or anything like that. It's all just that plain color there. We've got a nice sort of definition here at the neck, because we've got just a neck piece. It's kind of deep. You can kind of see in a little bit there at the neckline. I can kind of see the attachment point. Not my favorite, but from the front, not too bad. I'm kind of looking at it at a steep angle, and I can just see under the neck there. And of course, we've got that dark brown leather belt painted here. So I'm just going to move his arms up so we can see the details on the belt. We've got a nice dark brown color, silver belt buckle here in the front. We've got gold sort of Jedi food pellet capsule here. We've got those unique Phantom Menace style sculpted pouches. We've got a narrow one here on the side, more food pellets, more of those food pellets here, and more of those Episode 1 era sculpted pouches there. Now the paintwork on this one, if I can just move that arm out of the way, we've got a little bit of a paint splodge just going up a little bit higher from this particular pouch. Not too bad, but it does catch my eye, especially because it's a dark color on such a pale colored tunic there. And the plastics are different. This inner part is sort of a hard glossy plastic, and then down here, as we often find, we have a much more flexible plastic here for the lower half of the tunic. Now this one up here, this one does have a little bit of give, but it is a different plastic to this one down here. It's not really moving or squishing too much, but down here. So I like that we've got a really similar texture, because these are different plastics, and sometimes you can really tell when it's a different plastic, but I really like the fact that this is such a good color match, and we've got the same textures here, really nice. And of course, we've got some slits here in the plastic. So a lot of the times, Jedi tunics, even though on the original costume, we don't have a split down the side, Hasbro generally puts one in to help us move the legs a little bit more, but we also have a split here in the front, which is less common. So perhaps because we've kind of got a little bit more division here with the plastic lower half, we might be able to get some more high kicks, because I generally think of Jedi as being a bit more acrobatic than many other Star Wars characters, but especially Duel of the Fates. We see a lot of acrobatics, you know, a lot more kicking and things like that, especially if we have a Darth Maul or Black Series figure and we want to do Duel of the Fates with the characters. We're going to want to really be able to pose this Obi-Wan figure in a little bit more acrobatic poses than some of our other ones, you know, the old Ben ones, we were just going to have him mostly standing. So I'm hoping we'll get some good poses there. He doesn't have any split or anything down here at the back. It's just flat there. I say flat because it's just all one piece, but we can see I really like the fabric draping here. Of course, it's plastic, not actual fabric, but I like the way that they have sort of sculpted it to really look like it. You know, just looking at it, not even close up, it looks like a little fabric Jedi tunic all shrunken down. I love the way that you can get draping like that. I know sometimes I really like soft goods used for certain flowy fabric parts of costumes, but sometimes the fabric doesn't scale down and just kind of sits very solid. It's hard to get these thin flowy drapes on fabric when you shrink it down to Black Series scale. So I really like the texture and the sculpting here, really nice. And it's flowing down at the sleeves as well. We can see that's kind of flowing back towards the elbow. The prequel sleeves are very wide and drapey, so we've got a lot of plastic coming off here, and we can even see the inner tunic in there as well, like the little sort of tighter sleeve on the inside there, which is nice to see. Sometimes it's just kind of filled in. We do get a little bit of that sort of awkwardness here because of course it's plastic. They have to make it sort of just work there, but I like that we've still got the inner sleeve there. That's really fun to see. And of course, we've got the hands being sculpted in this sort of skin tone flesh. We've got that sort of attachment point there in the back of the hand. So this one's going to get a little bit of an up and down movement there. And then on this one, we have the same attachment point in the back of the hand. So we'll be able to move those around as well. Getting some good movement there. Sometimes with the Jedi tunics, because they come long and sort of flared, they can limit how much we can really turn the hands and stuff, but this is actually quite nice. It's not really restricting the movement very much, which is nice. Okay, so moving down, cool paintwork. We can see that we have an attachment point in that episode 1 style clip there worn on the belt. So we'll be able to attach that lightsaber hilt to that there. Moving down to the pants, so we can see we've got that articulation point at the top of the thigh. Now the thigh pieces sort of hidden under the tunic are a little bit smoother. Of course, they do have to do a lot of moving, and they're supposed to be covered, so I can understand why Hasbro hasn't sculpted the same level of fabric texture that we see here. A lot of wrinkles here on these pants. It's a lot smoother just at the top. It's like the texture changes here, but of course these are going to be moved around. We don't want any sort of texture and sculpting lines really grinding in that sort of articulation point there. And we can see, because this is an older figure, 5 years ago in fact, we have that older style of articulation at the knees. I don't like this style. I'm glad that Hasbro has shifted away from this for their modern figures. I just don't like those pegs, and sometimes these extra kneecap pieces, they just look a little bit awkward, especially when you start moving them. I know that having these 2 points and sort of having the separate kneecap means that you can kind of get some interesting articulation and sort of a greater range. But I just don't like it. I'm willing to trade off a little bit of articulation for the sake of having a little bit more of a cleaner sculpt to the figure. I really love Obi-Wan Kenobi's boots in the Phantom Menace. I love the straps. When I think of Jedi boots, I think of these leather straps. Really fun. So we've got those 3 straps across the top, one closer to the ankle. We can see that we've got some articulation here, quite deep at the ankle as well. Really fun. Now here again at the back, I don't like this. That sort of pale color plastic articulation piece is cutting into the brown of the boots, and I kind of wish that they had just painted the top of that at least, so it doesn't look quite as obvious cutting into the back of those boots there. It just feels like too much of this area is taken up by articulation plastic rather than sculpting. And I'm really keen to compare this to a modern Obi-Wan figure from the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, you know, because we're going to have much different articulation and sculpting there. So let's start testing out how well this figure can move. So overall, really nice paint work there, just that one kind of little splodge there, and just that tiny little, not even really a smudge, just a tiny little bit there at the widow's peak. Really, really minimal. Otherwise, of course, there isn't too much painting, so there isn't too many areas to really go wrong. We've basically just got the belt, the boots, and a little bit around the face. So, of course, shouldn't have too many areas there. So, of course, I've already started to move his arms. I do like the way, in Phantom Menace especially, the Jedi tunics really flowed over the shoulder. And we can see that this is harder plastic, so it's not going to flex, so this might stop us from moving the arms up as high as they're going to go. So we're going to get to about there, so it's not straight across because we've got these sloped shoulder pieces of the tunic, and they haven't sort of cut into it or done anything weird. So I like the sculpting over the shoulders, very nice, but because those tabards really hang over the shoulders, that is going to limit how high the arms can go. If I rotate the arms, I can get to about there as well. So again, still kind of limiting us. We're not going straight up and down there, but a little bit stiff out of the packet. You know, you got to sort of swing them around a little bit, get them a little bit looser to really test out the articulation. So we can see that we've got those sort of cutouts here in the front. Again, not my favorite, but then Jedi tend to hold their lightsabers, so we get the opportunity to bend their elbows. The draped sleeves of Jedi tunics sometimes look a little awkward when you bend them because fabric doesn't really sit like this. It would drape a little bit differently if the arms were up. But honestly, this is not too bad. And I do like that they took that extra step of sculpting that inner tunic sleeve, because of course that becomes very prominent when you're holding your hand up rather than having it hanging down. So yeah, it does hang pretty nicely here in the back, and the way it's meeting here, it doesn't really bother me. We've now got the articulation point at the very back underneath the elbow, so I like that. It's kind of a little bit more hidden. So of course, if we're going to do a two-handed grip, we need to get his hands together. See if I can get this up and around. I think we might be able to get it there. That's looking like I can get the hands together for two-handed grip on his lightsaber. That looks pretty good. Sometimes they can sort of fight with it. Sometimes the bulk around the torso means that the arms don't come in all the way to the body there. I'm kind of squeezing it, but I think I can get a little bit of rotation with the hands to hold onto his lightsaber, held with two hands there. That's looking good. Now he does have a join here at the waist. Oh, that's nice. Wow, okay, so he can swing around. That's actually a lot. Certainly, and he's actually holding those positions. Sometimes these articulation points, you can wobble them backwards and forwards, but they snap back to neutral. They're not going to hold it. And even when I'm moving him around, the sculpting on here, you can kind of see it's tucking in. It's got a join, so we've kind of got a little scooping in of the sculpting there, so it's not getting stuck. But that does mean that he does move around. And nice and smooth side to side as well. He's actually holding that. He doesn't sort of want to snap back. And there isn't even really like a full stopping point here at the middle. I can make him stop anywhere. That's nice. It's not fighting me either. I really like that. Cool. Okay. Onto the legs. This is the tricky part. So I generally don't like it if I'm pressing a lot on this, but this is because we've got this split in the front. I feel like I can actually bend this a lot, you know, without worrying about the splits up the side, because of course, if you really stress it, you'll create a crack that will journey beyond where it's really supposed to. These ones kind of have a little bit of a circular top, which does try to sort of minimize the amount of splitting, because of course, if it's just a straight slit, it'll just keep going. We've got a tiny little sort of circular top to the end of these ones. You can see it a little bit better on that side. So I feel like I can do a little bit of wiggling here just to see how much we can sort of really get the leg up if I just make sure that I've got it rotated the right way with it being underneath. Let's just see where we're going. Okay, so I can get it pretty high. That's actually fairly impressive because this is putting a little bit of force on the leg. It's kind of hitting along there, but I can get the leg all the way up. And of course, we've got that swivel point at the top. So I can turn that there. Nice light colors. I've been opening up some darker colored figures like that Luke Skywalker from The Mandalorian, where he's wearing all black, and it's really hard to see what's going on sometimes with all black figures. Let's check out this other side. Just got to see where my leg articulation is going. Okay, about the same, a little bit tighter. I think because I've got his waist piece sort of tipped a little bit to the side here. Pretty good. And let's test out to the side if I can. It's a little bit fighting me onto the side here. I don't like the older sort of articulation joints. Not my favorite in terms of at the hips and stuff like that. It's not moving as smoothly as I kind of want it to. That one is fighting me a little bit. Okay, got his legs back. I'm liking that I can actually kick fairly high with this one if I really want to. I don't like keeping the sort of plastic of these parts stressed like that, because I feel like if I go and change it, this is just going to form into the spot. But if you like doing sort of toy photography, then I can imagine, you know, you're not going to hold them in those poses long term just for the toy photography. Let's test out the knees. So because we've got two sort of attachment points, we can go all the way around. If I can get this one. This one's being a little bit stiff at the second part. Let's see. Very stiff. I can bend this one here. This one is being very stiff. So normally, yeah, that one's being very stiff. I'll test the other knee, see if this one's going to do it for me. Okay, that one's doing it at the lower part. There we go. Okay, you can do this with that two-part articulation, and I'm not really sure how many collectors really need that much articulation from their Black Series figures. You know, honestly, just having that one point in the knee where you can get to kind of here, maybe even a little bit higher, that's about all I need for my figures. He looks like he's skipping with his pointed toe. We'll just move that back. But yeah, you can get really high, but it starts looking odd. It just becomes all these joins, and I don't like it. Not my favorite. Glad that Hasbro has changed away from it. I do feel sorry if this is your preferred method of articulation, because you can just get a lot more sort of freedom of movement and range there, but it's not my favorite. I'm sorry. There is a little bit of a sculpting line down the front of his pants here. It just looks like a little sort of a bit of sort of plastic there, sort of, you know, where you get those little lines there where it's come from the mold and stuff like that. It's just a little bit visible on the front of this one, which I wasn't expecting. Generally, you kind of find those alongside the side or down the back here, because you can see we've got the seam of the pants sculpted in the side here on both sides. So I'm not sure why we've got this sort of awkward line running down the front of this leg and not this one, but I do like the sculpting of sort of the wrinkles of the pants and just the fabric sort of pulling, because of course they wear slightly loose pants tucked into boots, so you're going to get a lot of gathering. To stand this one up nice and steady, I do have this exposed at the knee, and I don't like that. See, this one looks a lot neater. I can't sort of see the sort of the pegs and stuff like that under the kneecap. On this side, I can. That's probably a little bit of a variance figure to figure, but when I want to stand him upright, I've got that articulation visible there, and that's kind of grabbing my attention in a way that I don't like. But he does stand up very solidly. He's got big clumpy Jedi boots, so I was kind of hoping he'd stand up very sturdily out of the packaging. And he looks ready for a lightsaber fight. So let's check out his lightsaber accessory. So I love Obi-Wan Kenobi's saber in The Phantom Menace. It is just so iconic, and just the way that they designed lightsabers for The Phantom Menace felt very different to the rest of the films. So now they are two-part ones, and you can see this one came out of the box. It's a little bit askew, and I kind of wish the Black Series gave us lightsabers like the Vintage Collection 3.75-inch line did, where we get one lightsaber with hilt and blade and one unlit lightsaber. So just the hilt with an attachment peg so that you can put a hilt piece on the belt and have a full bladed one. In the Black Series line, we get them as just this one accessory. We can see that we've got an attachment knob there, little peg, to attach it to the belt. And if we want to do that, then we're going to have to take the blade part off. And I really don't like doing that because the peg sort of attachments for the blade to the hilt are very small. I do like the painting on this one. We've even got that iconic red button there, some very nice shiny sort of metallic silver there and black, really nice. But because these are technically two parts, you do get this slight sort of, they don't always line up very straight. Sometimes you can fix that by sort of pulling them apart, putting them back together again. I'm going to test to see how hard this is to pull off. I don't like it, having to pull these pieces apart, because if you break that little peg, you suddenly don't have a lightsaber for your fairly expensive Star Wars toy. These do cost a lot more than vintage collection figures for us here in New Zealand. Not quite double, but it's getting there. This one is really fighting me. I don't... That's very tight. You can see I'm starting to pull that out, but I'm really pulling and I don't want to risk snapping that. I think I'm going to leave that together. I don't want to snap off that little attachment peg. Very tight. I just don't see why they can't just give us this separately. Because sometimes these pegs do get in the way of putting them into their hands, or they're very visible because they're not supposed to be there. It's just a function of it being a Black Series toy, not part of the original hilt design. I wish that they would just give us an unlit hilt and lit hilts like the 3.75-inch line. But I'm just going to test out this peg in the spot on his belt just to see how this would look. Okay, that's snapped in there, fairly nice. I didn't need to really fight it. And you could see, you could just kind of imagine how that would look sitting on his belt. It hangs nicely, looks cool. I like the silver on his belt. But honestly, when it comes to Jedi characters, I much more prefer to have them in their hands. You can see just how sort of neatly, it doesn't bed all the way down. You can kind of just make out the peg there, but it does look pretty cool. But honestly, I love Jedi with their lightsabers in their hands. So let's see how easily I can get this one into his hand, because of course this Obi-Wan saber has that big ball sort of pommel end to his lightsaber hilt. So I generally often push it through from the top, and I can manage to do that on this one. So now we've got this conundrum of which edge are we going to have that little peg sticking out at. So kind of feel like I'm going to end up with his hand kind of closer to the body so I can see that cool red button, but I can still see that peg there on the underside, which I'm less of a fan about. But I do like this version of Obi-Wan's saber. It doesn't have those large rectangular boxes that many of these lightsaber designs from the original trilogy had. I'm just trying to get his fingers down a little bit. So we can see that we can kind of get his fingers up around that sort of on-off button there. Now, the lightsaber hilt is hitting very close to this, so I'm not sure how easily I'm going to be able to get his other hand onto it. That's probably going to take a little bit of work. Let's see if I can press, yeah. Okay, I'm just going to take a minute to see if I can get that two-handed pose. So, spending a quick minute, this is the two-handed pose that I could get the prequel Obi-Wan Kenobi figure to hold his lightsaber in. Not the neatest that I've seen in a Black Series figure, but it does work without too much of a fight. I kind of wish that one of the hands had a side-to-side articulation. Both of them are sort of up and down. But either way, it's a pretty good pose. I can't sort of make him do too many others with a two-handed grip, but that's pretty standard for Black Series figures. Their arms and elbows are going to be close to the body, so you're generally going to get a very similar pose there. One thing I forgot to test out earlier was tipping his head around. His Padawan braid is pretty flexible, so that is not stopping his head from moving around. Not very much in the sort of backwards and forwards, but plenty side to side, which to me makes more sense. We're not really making our figures look straight up and down very often. Very tight in that motion, but very smooth, side to side, very easy there. And like before, he stands up pretty easily. Of course, the lightsaber is not really going to throw him off balance. It's a small accessory, not like a big jetpack or anything like that. So he stands pretty well, and he looks ready to take on Darth Maul. So I have a couple of other Obi-Wan figures that I wanted to do a quick comparison with. The first is the Episode 3 Obi-Wan Kenobi figure that was also released in the archive line. I opened this one up a little while ago. You can see we still have those older style pegs there in the knees. And of course we have the episode 3 likeness. I think it's really interesting how his lightsaber changes so much across the line. Of course, this is his one that he takes into the original trilogy, so it's a little bit paler than the vibrant blue he has earlier on. Really interesting to see those side by side in terms of the color. Also, with this episode 3 Obi-Wan, we have soft goods here for the lower half of his tunic. Still has plastic tabards down the front, but we have a soft goods section here, starting from the belt and running down. So you can see sometimes the plastic sculpting looks better, even though it's going to really restrict the sort of articulation and posability. This looks a little bit odd from the back. Kind of looks cool from the front. We do get a little bit of a different texture and just a little bit of different color there as well, because of course fabric and plastic. This one just gives us an overall sort of better sort of uniform look, even if it's going to restrict our posing there. And of course, I just don't like those knees. I think they actually bother me less on this figure than on this one. The kneecaps on this one are very small. They kind of pinch in a lot before the boots. And Jedi pants being sort of slightly loose, they should sort of balloon out just a little bit before they're tucked into the knees. And these kneecaps go very small. This one just, it bothers me less. Somehow we've got a much bigger kneecap section here than this one. So I feel like this one just sort of, it doesn't draw my eye as badly as it does on that episode 3 version. So this one wins in that respect. And I kind of like, if I just sort of hold them up, I like the plastic used for the Phantom Menace, Obi-Wan's face. There is something, I know this one, you know, he's perhaps gotten a little bit of a heat, maybe a little bit of a tan from the volcanoes on Mustafar or something like that, but it looks very shiny. And I just kind of, I guess, most supposed to make him look perhaps a bit sweaty from his duel. This one just looks a little bit more like a real flesh tone. It's just an interesting little observation. Could be very specific to my figures, but I just like the sort of flesh tone of this Phantom Menace one compared to the episode 3 version. They both stand up reasonably well. Of course, we've got same sort of body type, you know. The one on this one, I didn't like the way that they did the tunic, and it could just be the way that mine is set, but as soon as you tip them back, those sort of tabards, you can see the really big cutoff point there, and sort of the torso is underneath. This one, it kind of flows over the belt, so if you tip them around a lot, it feels disjointed. This one, the tunic tucks under the belt, which we can kind of see there. So when you move it around, it just stays tucked under the belt, and I like that better. So this one is actually winning on a lot of points. Very cool there. So I have one more for a little bit of comparison, and this is an Obi-Wan Kenobi or Ben Kenobi figure from the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. This is the Jabeam version here. So we have the modern knees, and you can see the articulation is all just kind of hidden here in the back. We don't have those ugly sort of connection points here and the big kneecaps in the front. I really like that. We've got very similar sort of tabard sculpting here, fitting into the belt like we have on the prequel one. And I think a better likeness for Ewan. I know it kind of helps when characters have facial hair and sort of distinctive hairstyles. It helps to sort of really flesh out the likeness. But overall, I think this is one of my favorite Obi-Wan figures, just because of that sort of Ewan McGregor likeness there. He's such an iconic character. You know, we see him in so many films and now Disney Plus series. I think it's interesting that we've also got sort of a bit of a jump in terms of colors. So in terms of timelines, this would be the correct timeline, episode 1, episode 3, and then the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, but we've got very different blues when it comes to the lightsabers. These two kind of match, and then we've got this pale one, but of course Hasbro does need to match them on screen, but now I'm feeling like I want to go back and watch them to see if the color difference really is that strong and different between the lightsabers, because they look nothing alike here in these Black Series toys. So I don't know if that is a part of Lucasfilm or Hasbro with their toys. And of course, this one comes with a soft goods robe. Obi-Wan does have Jedi robes with these two outfits in The Phantom Menace and Revenge of the Sith, but they opted not to include a soft goods robe, so we don't really have those options there. I love soft goods robe, especially on Jedi in the Black Series line. Absolutely love it. It just gives you so many options, and sort of, I just think Jedi look a little bit more complete with a Jedi robe. There's just something about it. Of course, Obi-Wan is known for his dramatic robe drop drops, you know, especially in episode 3. It's a shame this one especially doesn't come with it. I really sort of miss the robes on these two figures. I know if you're going to do fight scenes, Obi-Wan generally doesn't wear his robe during a lightsaber fight, so if you're posing him with his lightsaber out, I guess it makes sense not to have it on there, but I like the option, especially since we can put just the hilt on their belts to do the sort of Obi-Wan dramatic robe, and we've got that option on this one. I love this robe. They've got the hood stitched well on the shoulders, so it really flows over, fits him really nicely. I love it. It's really fun to see the sort of the progression of Obi-Wan figures. He's such a classic character. I love seeing so many versions of him in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. He comes with lots of different outfits. I've got a couple from the Obi-Wan Kenobi series I'm still yet to open. I want to sort of complete a timeline. I need the episode 2 Obi-Wan I'm sadly missing from my collection because I kind of want to add them all up and you get an old bed from the original trilogy and have a timeline of Obi-Wan figures. He's fantastic. I like the details on all of this one. I really am surprised at how much I like this one, especially compared to the episode 3. I think I like it better than this one, just in terms of the detail of the tunics, even the face and everything like that, and the knees. Even though I don't like that articulation style, I like it better than the way that they've done it on this one. Still prefer it on this one though, of course, with that modern style where we don't have that sort of separate kneecap piece there. But yeah, this was really fun. I love Obi-Wan Kenobi. I love having more merch of him in my collection, and I'm really happy that Hasbro has the archive line as a way of reissuing popular and long sold out figures for Black Series collectors like myself that missed out all those years ago back in 2019 when this was originally released. So really happy to have him in my collection. Fantastic. I think he looks great. This was a lot of fun. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today as I opened up another Black Series collectible, checked out the details, did a bit of a comparison, and had a lot of fun. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening wherever you are in the galaxy, and let's hang out again very soon for more Star Wars fun. May the Force be with you. If you're a Black Series fan, I recently unboxed the Luke Skywalker Imperial Light Cruiser figure. That video is linked here in case you haven't already seen it, as well as a whole Black Series unboxing playlist. This is the way.